Hello, I'm Judy Selesnick, and I'd like to welcome you to Meet the Candidates, a community program presented by PAT, Peabody Access Telecommunications. As you may know, former State Representative Cole recently resigned, and we must hold a special election to fill this vacancy to ensure that Peabody has adequate representation in the state legislature. The primary election was held on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2016, and we interviewed all 5 candidates in the primary, and we are now interviewing the finalists. The final election is Tuesday, March 1st, which is also Super Tuesday, the day of the presidential primary election in Massachusetts. I'm sure we'll top the primary vote. We have invited the 3 final candidates for state representative to participate in these interviews to allow you folks at home to meet the candidates and become familiar with them and their views and their priorities as we move toward the final election. They are Christopher Gallagher, the independent candidate in this race, Stephanie Peach, winner of the Republican primary, and Thomas Walsh, winner of the Democratic primary. All 3 will now be interviewed. I'm pleased to welcome Christopher Gallagher, the independent candidate for state representative. Hi, Christopher. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Judy. Thank you.
Would you please briefly tell us a little about yourself, personally and professionally, what qualifications you have to be our next state representative, and why you're running for this office?
Sure. My name is Chris Gallagher. I will appear on the ballot as Christopher M. Gallagher, and as you say, I am an independent or unenrolled candidate in the state of Massachusetts. I grew up here in Peabody on County Street, and I went to school at Peabody Schools. I then was an operations specialist in the United States Navy. I spent the better part of 30 years working within the hospitality industry, where I worked my way through the ranks as a, from the prep cook to sous chef, executive chef, manager, director. And for the last 5 years, I've worked with U.S. Foods, the second largest food distributor in the world, as a regional business development manager, working with thousands of our area businesses. Mm-hmm. I feel that brings a skill set to the table that is needed, okay, that we, hospitality, we're all customers of our government. And I believe that we can do a better job representing that aspect. That in the industry we bring art, we bring good service, we bring levity. I think that is all things that are needed in our government. That we need to really look at not Democrat or Republican, but what is going on in our community and fully represent them. In Peabody, in Massachusetts, we're 52% unenrolled voters, and in Peabody, we're 58% unenrolled voters. So I feel that I better represent, in that regard, someone who is willing to look at all aspects of different beliefs and represent them accordingly.
Okay. What do you see as the 2 major issues facing Peabody at the state level, and how would you be instrumental in addressing these?
Sure. I know a lot of talk has been about the opioid crisis. I do believe that is a huge problem for Peabody. I know that there's been a lot of work done on that issue. I would like to continue the work on that issue because it does remain an issue. It's only getting worse every day. It doesn't seem to be getting much better. So I know that we need to keep working. All the work that's been done is fairly new, and we'd like to see some results on that, but we definitely can't lose focus on that. So I think we need to continue focus on that, as well as the affordability of living here. That's another big issue, which is intertwined with many other issues. I think that the state, as well as federal government and local government, can all work together. We have a great mayor working with the council, which is great. For the first time I can remember that we have such a harmonic setup here, that we have a governor working with our Senate President as well as Speaker of the House, and it seems that this is a great time to get some things done here, and we take the opportunity that exists to develop our community. The affordability issue comes up when, obviously we have a revenue issue. Okay, if we need to raise taxes, we have a revenue issue, which means we can really become more dependent on businesses for business taxation and relieve the residents by bringing more businesses here. And that, again, coming back to my skill set, I'm a business development manager. I deal with thousands of businesses. I listen to them every day. I think that we can definitely attract some businesses here, becoming more and more business friendly, which I know that we've already begun here, and work on that. So I'd like an opportunity to finish out Leah's term so that I can get up there and at least set some of these things in motion so that we can do that.
Well, your comment on the harmony of the state government and the city government, if we could only do that on the federal level now.
Right, tie it all in, right.
Would you tell me your views on the status of the Kinder Morgan pipeline and whether or not you support the pipeline? And if yes, why? And if no, why not?
I think it's extremely controversial. There's two sides to all stories, and the need for the gas is one issue, and obviously the intrusiveness of how it's coming through is another one. Never mind, as you just brought up, the federal government having so much say in it just happening. So it happening in the 13th district for the most part, and most of its issues lie there. I would support that district as the 12th. I would definitely support, at this moment, Representative Spiliotis is there. And I would definitely like to talk with him a little bit more about where this is headed so that, we can support our, in this case, within the same city, but our neighbors, as well as overall in Massachusetts. It seems to be an extremely negative situation for all the landowners, never mind our environmental impact. So I think that we're going in the right direction. Fighting it, I believe, is the right thing to do at this point, because it has really a lot of folks up in arms. But as it proceeds, is there compromises that can take place? Are there other things that can happen? I think that there's always room to talk. It's just that right now it seems they're very set on their path. And with that said, I would back that district on whatever they would do.
Okay. I know that Senator Rosenberg, Senate President, has been fierce in his opposition to the pipeline because it goes through Western Massachusetts. And I'm just wondering, how do you see Peabody working with the Senate President on this issue?
Right. I would personally would be open to conversations with absolutely any one of them, Senate President or anyone involved in the Senate, as well as anyone in the House and the governor himself. I think that we all need to talk about this. We need to be concerned about exactly those things. We need to be concerned about the intrusiveness of it, and some things we've already put in place, like the environmental impact. That trail has been there, and it was there for a reason. And we need to protect those things. And I, being an unenrolled candidate, I don't really have those barriers that exist otherwise. I feel that I am free to speak with anybody about anything and not be blocked by any kind of party affiliation or what I'm supposed to say. So I would love to sit with all of them and work with them.
Okay. A proposed ballot question that has been approved to move forward by the Attorney General is the legalization of recreational marijuana. This is a long question. As you probably know, Massachusetts voters legalized marijuana for medical use in 2012 and decriminalized the possession of small amounts of the substance in 2008. There will most likely be a ballot initiative in 2016 to legalize marijuana in Massachusetts, although a state rep from Cambridge filed a bill legalizing marijuana in Mass to get legislators talking about it. At the State House hearing on this bill in January 2016 before the Judiciary Committee, the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana testified, offering lawmakers a chance to avoid the question appearing on the 2016 statewide ballot, since the proposed legislation is similar to the ballot initiatives. The major difference between the bill and the ballot initiative is that the bill limits the number of locations that can hold marijuana licenses and ties them to the number of alcohol licenses in a town. For example, if a city or town has 10 liquor licenses, it would be able to get a maximum of 2 marijuana licenses. The bill and the ballot have strong controls on edibles, and they limit servings and create requirements on labeling of the packaging, which will also be child-resistant and senior-friendly. The ballot petition initiative's aim is to legalize marijuana, and feel the public policy question isn't whether to legalize marijuana, but how to do it. 23 states and the District of Columbia have legalized marijuana in some form or another. Where do you stand on this, and what facts or issues form your opinion?
Sure. I feel that both, from what I understand of the ballot initiative and the bill, that they're both flawed. And I think that by the bill being presented for the idea of getting folks talking about it was a great idea. I think that folks need to be talking about it, especially when you have a pending ballot initiative. I do believe that the voters should have their say in the ballot initiative. If they find that they would like marijuana legalized, then I think that there's some work to be done either way. Because I think that a lot of things are not being addressed. And you brought up the edibles. The edibles are very dangerous in that sense that they are food. It really, in my idea, coming from the food industry, the FDA does handle all of our food. I do know that there has been some work done already with the FDA and the DEA to reclassify marijuana for this purpose. We really do need to protect folks if you're going to legalize that, because it is food and we do protect our food. And that being said, that if it were to become legalized, I could only really support the idea of it knowing that it was regulated, that the marijuana was grown domestically, that there's some kind of controls in that, knowing that. Throughout the taxation process, I'm sure that there'll be some form of, in cigarettes we have stamps, and in some form, way of another shape, we can find a way to regulate this. But there's a lot of things between heavy metals and everything that comes over the border in this marijuana to make it heavier. So we definitely need to make it domestically grown, and I haven't seen that anywhere. As far as in proposed legislation or anything. And as far as the FDA or some other mode, I mean, the food code is in Massachusetts, which is different than any other state. The food code is really governed by the local authority with the Board of Health. So however they work this out, this really needs to be governed in a sense that the freedom of the vote saying that the voters do want to legalize marijuana. Well, if you're going to enjoy the marijuana, then it needs to be in a sense that's not going to hurt everybody. And then comes the issue of children having access to an edible marijuana by accident or any other way, shape, or form, and identification like we do with cigarettes, and like you mentioned, alcohol. How do we license it? I think there's a lot of work to be done. That's evidenced by the fact of the recent trip that they've all taken out to Colorado to see how they're managing it, and it seems that they came back with a lot more questions about what they're doing. So I think it needs a little more work. The ballot initiative will speed that up. It was very wise to submit the bill and get folks talking about it, but there's a lot of work to be done.
So the process is good, it just needs a lot of work.
A lot of
basically.
work, right.
One of the issues approved by the Attorney General to move forward to a constitutional convention, if all other requirements are met, is a higher tax on millionaires. This would impose an additional 4% tax on people with taxable incomes higher than $1 million. Revenue could only be used to fund public education and transportation. Where do you stand on this, and what facts or issues form your opinion?
Okay, I don't know everything about what he has proposed, but just skim coating it, that I don't believe that we cannot find other revenue sources. I don't believe that we have looked far enough for other revenue sources before just stating the millionaire tax. So if it ended up after doing that type of work that, yeah, that's our last resort, then I would definitely be willing to look down that road, but I don't currently feel that that is exhausted yet.
Okay. So basically you want more research and more information?
Right.
Would you tell us what other issues you feel are important to Peabody that would get your attention at the state level, and how would you work on them?
Sure. One of them is, I've been really pushing this for a while. As you probably know, I am, not, other than being a notary, justice of the peace, and constable in the city of Peabody, I'm the former chairman of the Cable Commission. And with that, I learned a lot of different things about this industry that in my time served there. And one thing that I would love to work on is to, and it would help our development as well, is bringing middle mile fiber up the I-95 corridor through Route 1 up the I-95 corridor or some sort of that. And
middle mile fiber is?
Sure, middle mile fiber is your access to broadband, the internet and whatnot. So by having a fiber connection, different municipalities could connect to that, and whether it be for municipal use, PEG access, whatnot, or to create an ISP within the community or whatever needs you would have what they call GPS or gigabyte per second access, and you would be able to run. As we grow here in technology, we have more need for bandwidth. And that bandwidth is extremely important and valuable. And with GE coming into Massachusetts, with our great healthcare sector here in Peabody, sharing data is extremely important. And I think that we can grow on that. I think there's other reasons why we need more data sources as well. But I think that is going to be something in the future that we can have innovators, all these innovative industries working their way 20 minutes north of Boston, and really bring that business that we need for that affordability of living and be a little bit more dependent on the commercial base, relieve the residential base, and keep it where we've always had the lower tax rate. And that's something I'd like to work on. This term that we're going into is extremely short. There's about 5 months working. So, like I say, even if you were lucky to get something going, I think that these are some of the things I'd like to touch on to get at least the ball rolling.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for your views and opinions. I think this will help the viewers at home understand your political leanings and help them decide Peabody's best representation. Is there anything else that you'd briefly like to tell the citizens of Peabody to have them know about you, or anything else you'd like to say to them?
Sure. Thank you very much. I am a Peabody native. I take a lot of pride in Peabody. Actually, I was around when that term came about, the Pride in Peabody, through a contest in our schools. And I've been living it ever since. And I know a lot of folks that were around at that time have been living that, and we're really making a push to make sure that it's making a comeback, if you will. And I would like the opportunity to fill this void created at the state level, and go to work for you as I have been in other ways, and represent the community in that regard, and make Peabody a better place.
Well, thank you, Chris. I'd like to wish you good luck in the election. I'm pleased to welcome Stephanie Peach to meet the candidates. Hi, Stephanie. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, personally and professionally, what qualifications you have to be our next state representative, and why you're running for this office.
Okay, well, a little bit about me. I am 25 years old. I went K through 12 in Peabody Public Schools. My husband went K through 12 in Peabody Schools as well. I graduated high school in 2009 and went on to Westfield State University to earn my bachelor's in history and political science. From there, I started working in the State House upon graduation. And I worked for one of the reps from Central Mass, which was a great opportunity, who had been there for a very long time, and just a wealth of knowledge. And when the opening came up in Representative Cole's office, I was able to transition into her office to work for Peabody, which is what I really wanted to do. So while I was working for Representative Cole, I was also earning my master's degree at UMass Boston. So I would go to school at night while I worked full-time during the day. And I graduated with my master's in public administration this last spring of 2015. So throughout my time in the State House, I really was able to develop some great relationships with the reps and the staff that work there. And I've been able to witness firsthand the imbalance that we have on Beacon Hill in our state government. There's only now 34 Republicans, I believe, in the House. And that's just a supermajority of Democrats. There's not much debate on the floor of the House. Anything that comes to the floor of the House, you kind of know whether it will pass or it will fail. And I think that's not what our democratic government is supposed to be about. That's not how we were set up, and it's not doing any justice to the people. So I've always wanted to serve in government since I was a little girl. My mom pegs it around nine years old, saying, I want to be a senator, Mom. And I never expected the opportunity to come so early in my life, but I'm glad that it did. I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people in this city. So I'm really running to fulfill, a vacancy that we have. I think I've been doing this job as an aide for the last 2 years for the people of Peabody, providing the constituent services and drafting and filing legislation on behalf of the representatives. So I think we really are at a vital time for this race, where we'll be heading into budget for the state. And I think that we need someone who's ready to go into the State House, and on day one, work with the people that are up there and get what we need for the city of Peabody. So that's really why I'm running here. I've always wanted to do it, and I would love to go back to Beacon Hill and continue to work for the people of Peabody.
Well, that's a very good qualification. It sounds like you have a lot of experience. What do you see as the two major issues facing Peabody at the state level, and how would you be instrumental in addressing these?
At the state level, I think one of our biggest issues is our local aid. Each city and town receives funding from our states, and I think Peabody could be doing a little bit better. I think we need to work hard on our state level to reform our state agencies so that there is more money to bring to our local cities and towns. I'm a strong believer in the best government is local government. I think we know what's best for our city here in Peabody, and we don't really need the state telling us how we should and can spend the money that we have. I think that in order to do that, we should be focusing on reforming the welfare system here in Massachusetts and also our DCF system. I think the governor has taken a great first step in requiring all mandates and all regulations be overviewed in each agency, which is really important, and it's very important for our businesses, especially our small businesses. But what I hear going door to door from people is that the biggest issue we have is our taxes. Our property taxes in Peabody go up every single year. I'm a homeowner here in Peabody, so I feel that burden. And it's something, especially for people who are on fixed incomes, it's just something that becomes too much at some point. At some point, people can't hold on to their homes that they've poured their life savings into anymore. Even if the home is paid off and you're in retirement and you did everything right, those tax increases can really be the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's unfortunate that we have people that have to sell their homes when they don't want to. I think that's a big issue that we need to work on at the state level, bringing more money back to our cities and town, but also on a local level, being more creative with the way that we fund things.
Okay. Why don't you tell me your views, although we did cover this briefly in the last interview, on the Kinder Morgan pipeline, whether or not you support the pipeline, and if you do, why, and if you don't, why?
So this issue actually came up while I was still working at the State House. And it was very surprising to us to learn that this was something that was going to go through Peabody, because Kinder Morgan has been up on Beacon Hill for a few years now, advocating for this extension. And never once was it ever brought up that they had planned to go through our city or even anywhere on the North Shore in the plans that were ever presented. So once we found out that it was going through Peabody and the residents that it was going to affect, and just the natural resources that it may affect if anything were to go wrong, Representative Cole was one of the first legislators on the North Shore to publicly oppose this, and that was something I stood with her strongly on, not only as her aide, but as a citizen of Peabody. I don't understand why this was the option, this was the route that they chose. I think that we need to fight that as much as we can, and those are relationships that I've built on Beacon Hill. We started advocating with other reps that are being affected by the same thing, so that when an Article 97 vote comes to the floor, we have the votes we need in order to stop this. We need to make sure that we're protecting the protected land that they plan to use, and we also need to make sure we're protecting the residents of Peabody. There's no benefit to the residents here in Peabody that I can see. Everyone talks about a shortage of energy, and I think that's true. We have a shortage of energy, but I don't think we've quite determined what type of energy would be best for us here in the Commonwealth. I don't believe that energy is natural gas. I think we need to work towards more sustainable energy in our Commonwealth and make sure that we're doing it in a safe, responsible manner for all of the residents of the Commonwealth, and this pipeline is just not safe for anyone.
Okay, for anybody who doesn't know what an Article 97 is.
So it's part of our Massachusetts Constitution, and it is for protected land. So land that, so this land that we're talking about runs along the Ipswich River. The Ipswich River is not only a protected reservoir for, it provides drinking water for millions of people here on the North Shore. The surrounding land around it is protected by our state so that you can't develop on it. And in order to develop on it, you need a vote from the House of Representatives waiving the Article 97 constitutional requirement.
Well, considering the fact that Senate President Rosenberg is strongly against it because it will be going through Western Massachusetts as well, and I know that the state, I'm not sure that they really have much power in this. It's really up to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And how do you think the state can influence FERC on this?
I think we really need to, we've dealt with FERC already from a city level and a state level. We've advocated to them the fact that we are opposed to this as a city, as legislators at the state. I think we need to continue to work with that. I think this comes down to a states' rights issue. This is, it's interstate commerce because the pipeline, comes from another state, which tends to be federal regulations, but I think at some point we need to look and see whose voices matter here. I would work very hard with our Congressman, Seth Moulton, to make sure that our voices here in Peabody are heard. I think he does understand where we're coming from, but I think we also need to start advocating to other congressional members from other parts of the country. If this is going to be something where they bypass our state rights here, we need to make sure that we have votes and we have advocates in Washington to make sure that our best interests are represented. And the best way to do that is to start reaching out to the other congressmen and congresswomen from across the country who this is affecting as well.
We already have a pipeline from Maritimes,
Yes.
an energy pipeline going through. And when I was in state government, we fought with FERC over that, and it's there. So I hope that there's something that can be done this time.
I hope so too.
A proposed ballot question that has been approved to move forward by the Attorney General is the legalization of recreational marijuana. As you probably know, Massachusetts voters legalized marijuana for medical use in 2012 after decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of the substance in 2008. There will most likely be a ballot initiative in 2016, this year, to legalize marijuana in Mass. Although a state rep from Cambridge filed a bill legalizing marijuana to get legislators talking about it. At the State House hearing on this bill in January 2016 before the Judiciary Committee, the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana in Massachusetts testified, offering lawmakers a chance to avoid the question appearing on the 2016 Mass statewide ballot, since the proposed legislation is very similar to their ballot initiative. The major difference between the bill and the ballot initiative is that the bill limits the number of locations that can hold marijuana licenses and ties them to the number of alcohol licenses in a town. For example, if a city or town has 10 liquor licenses, it would be able to get a maximum of 2 marijuana licenses. The bill and the ballot initiative have strong controls on edibles, and they limit servings and create requirements on labeling of the packaging, which will also be child-resistant and senior-friendly. The ballot petition initiative's aim is to legalize marijuana and feel the public policy question isn't whether to legalize marijuana, but how to do it. 23 states and the District of Columbia have legalized marijuana in some form or another. Where do you stand on this, and what facts or issues form your opinion?
This is an issue that I've never really had a strong opinion on, and it's come up a lot just because it's most likely going to be a ballot initiative. Me personally, I don't like the idea of legalizing marijuana. I think for people who are facing an opioid addiction right now, they didn't start just taking opioids. Marijuana was most likely the first drug that they used. Of course, there are people who smoke marijuana who are not heroin addicts. I'm not saying that in any way. I don't know enough about it. I don't know the science behind it. I would honestly like to look more closely at the states who have legalized it already to see what issues that they're facing and what benefits that they've seen. All the reports are scattered, and it depends on who is putting them out. They're all biased, I think. There are some that are showing in Colorado that the crime rate has gone down, and they're getting increased revenues at the state level. And then there are some reports saying in Colorado, bad things are happening. And so it's hard for me to see which source I should trust and what I would see. I think it's important to have our voters have a say in this. If the legislature doesn't take action, I would support whatever ballot initiative the people of Massachusetts voted on. As a legislator, that's your job. But at this point, I would say I would not vote in favor of that, because I think it's something, as someone who plans to have a family, it scares me to think about marijuana being used in such a way as cigarettes, just being on the streets and having that out there. So I'm wary on it. I've heard both arguments. It's always been something I've never taken a strong stance on. But as a citizen, as a voter, I would vote against the initiative.
Okay. One of the issues approved to move forward to a constitutional convention, if all other requirements are met, is a higher tax on millionaires. This would impose an additional 4% tax on people with taxable incomes higher than $1 million. Revenue could only be used to fund public education and transportation. Where do you stand on this, and what facts or issues form your opinion?
I'm opposed to this. I am opposed to any new taxes in our Commonwealth at this time. I think we have a priorities issue, not a revenue issue at the state government. I think until we start looking at each agency and reforming our agencies so that they work in an efficient manner, I will hold the strong ground on any new taxes. Also, as someone, I don't like to single people out, just certain groups of people to tax them more. People who live in this Commonwealth and are fortunate enough to be millionaires, they provide a lot of money to our Commonwealth already. Many of them are business owners. They are already paying income tax here in Massachusetts. I would hate to see them move 40 minutes up 93 to New Hampshire, and we lose that income altogether. We need to remain competitive here in Massachusetts to make sure that we are still bringing in the revenues from the people who are lucky enough and work hard enough to be successful. As someone who as I've chosen the life of public service, don't ever anticipate being a millionaire unless I hit the Powerball when I play it once a year. I think that the people who they already provide a lot in our tax revenues here. That's not to say that I don't support increasing funding for transportation and education. Those are two of my biggest things. I would say education, housing, and transportation is what we need to focus our revenues on. But we need to look at better ways to do that. And until we look at each state agency and reform those agencies so they perform efficiently, then I would not be in favor of increasing any taxes across the board.
What other issues do you think are important to Peabody and would get your attention that you would like to work on?
As I just mentioned, I think housing is a big issue. Not only I like affordable housing with a capital A, which is subsidized, but just affordable housing with a lowercase a. Being able to provide grants through the state to the city to help us develop more areas, especially in our downtown. We have a mixed zoning down there to make sure that we're filling the spaces above the businesses on Main Street and attracting young professionals to Peabody. I think one of our biggest issues that the state can help out with is the development of downtown Peabody, and we have started to do that at the state. We've received a grant. We changed the traffic pattern, which everyone's aware of, and we're going to continue to do the next phase of that this year. So I think after that is completed, we really need to focus on housing in the city of Peabody. How do we bring young professionals to Peabody? How do we revitalize our city to be much more like our surrounding neighbors, to have a walkable downtown, to attract the right types of businesses downtown so that downtown Peabody becomes a vibrant area to live. And that's not only going to benefit the people that live down there. Selfishly, I live down there. I would love to see downtown boom. I'd love to have more reasons to walk down there. But also, that's going to benefit all of our residents in Peabody because it's going to bring more taxes into our city. And that will, keep, I would hope, at least keep our property taxes for the residents stagnant. So.
Well, I think we just want to make sure that we don't end up with only the overflow of people who can't find housing in Salem. So I think that's a good idea. Also, I think we need both small a and capital A here in Peabody, so that would be...
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is one of our housing developments is actually coming up for their 30-year contract, and they provide a lot of elderly housing and affordable housing with a capital A, and we need to ensure that they're going to stay here and continue to provide those affordable rates for our senior citizens and those who are receiving state subsidies in order to live and stay in this city. I think that's really important. That's something we've been working at the state.
Well, I want to thank you for your views and opinions, Stephanie.
Thank you.
I think this will help the viewers at home to understand your political leanings and help them decide Peabody's best representation. Is there anything else you'd like the citizens of Peabody to know about you, and or anything else you'd like to say to them?
I'd really just like to reiterate the fact that after March 1st, we're going into our state budget, and we really need someone on Beacon Hill who's been through our budget process. We need someone who understands all of the issues that are going to be presented in the budget and the people who you need to be able to get your amendments in front of. I've been up there for the last 2 years. I've gone through these budget cycles, and I've worked really hard to develop relationships with the staffers of the reps, and that's really important to make sure that any amendment that would be filed under me for the city of Peabody would make it to the right representatives that need to see it. And I think it's really important that we don't waste any time. There's only 8 months until the next election for this seat. We need someone who can be really effective in those 8 months. I have the most recent experience in our state house, and I think that's going to benefit the people of Peabody very well.
Right. Well, I want to wish you good luck. This has been an interview with Stephanie Peach, who is the Republican candidate for state representative. I am pleased to welcome Tom Walsh, the Democratic candidate for state representative, to the show. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Judy. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Could you briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, personally and professionally, what qualifications you have to be our next state representative, and why you're running for this office?
Sure. I'm a lifelong resident of Peabody. Went to the Peabody Public School System, South School, Higgins Junior High School at the time, Peabody Veterans Memorial High School. I earned a Bachelor of Science degree, Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science from Salem State College. And about 10 years ago, went back to school and got my funeral directing license. So I am a funeral director here at the Conway Cale Broda Funeral Home on Lynn Street in Peabody. 2 children, both grown. My daughter is now 26, my son is 19, married to Mary. We live on Linfield Street. I've been involved civically and in elective office probably most of my adult life. Served on the school committee for a term, the school building committee when we built the Brown and the Carroll schools. I have been a city councilor. I was elected right out of college, councilor at large, where I served 2 terms, and then was elected state representative, where I served 4 terms. The school committee came after the legislature when my children were smaller. And then in 2013 was elected again to the city council at large, re-elected this past fall, and then most recently won the primary for the state representative seat, which is what brings us here today. The reason I'm running is because for the second time in just over 2 years, we find ourselves without a state representative. After Joyce passed away a couple of years ago, we had several months where we were without a representative. And then Fred Berry retired as well. So we've lost a little bit of that exclusive representation in Peabody. And again, we find ourselves since September 29th of last year without anybody exclusively advocating for the residents of Peabody on Beacon Hill. And I think that if you take my elective office experience, my civic involvement, my education, and the fact that I've been a lifelong resident and been involved in so many different things, I think that I could advocate very well for the city of Peabody. I just believe that the mayor and the administration needs a partner, somebody who can go to Beacon Hill and advocate for the goals and the projects that we want to accomplish here in Peabody. And I think I'm the one who's best suited to do that.
And that would be because you've worked with the mayor before?
We've worked very well together. Before I was elected to the council, when the mayor created his Economic Advisory Council, he appointed me as one of his members. And my focus has been mostly at Centennial Park. A couple of the little things that I've worked on is the beautification. And now at both entrances, we have people who are participating in the Adopt an Island program. And you'll notice a couple of years ago, we had overgrown weeds, and it was kind of filthy at both entrances. And with the help of the city, taking out some of the cement walkway and things like that, and then people adopting islands. Mary and I adopted an island at Linfield Street and First Ave, and then Michael Weiss adopted the larger one because it was a little bit too much for us to handle. And then on the other end at Summit Street at Centennial Drive, I started the first one, and it just mushroomed, and now Boston Children's and many of the businesses at 10 Centennial have adopted many of those. My brother took 2 of the spaces. Lou Dennis has one. So as you go down now, we are all the way to the lights right across from, used to be North Shore Medical. So we're down that far with that beautification project, which I know it's a little thing, but what it proves is if you can show a project can be accomplished, once you see it, the initiative starts, people will help, people will join. And I think that's just a microcosm or a mini example of what we can accomplish in Peabody.
Sure. Well, it's always nice to make Peabody prettier. Not
That it
that
is.
it's not pretty. But what do you see as the 2 major issues facing Peabody at the state level, and how would you be instrumental in addressing these?
Okay, always money. Money is always an issue. When you think of the things that we have to finance here at the local level, we have a school system that is forever in need of upgrading. We're building the new middle school, which is an expensive endeavor, but also necessary. And our reimbursement rate is roughly 50%, just under 50%. So we're always looking for grants and any opportunities for money to augment what we're doing here in the city of Peabody. You look at downtown and the progress that we've made on Main Street, and you'll see the reconstruction and the reconfiguration of Peabody Square itself as soon as the weather breaks. We need more state money to continue that project. That is really helping in the pedestrian friendliness of downtown, and it's supposed to help us with traffic when all the lights are synchronized. So those are things that I would continue to, shake the tree at Beacon Hill, for lack of a better term, to try to get any available funds. What we need is somebody who is up there advocating on Peabody's behalf all the time, because right now we have no one. The other issue is always, I think every community in Massachusetts is struggling with, is the opioid issue. And that is something that I would work closely with law enforcement, with the district attorney's office, with the governor's administration, and everybody who is, really we're all pushing the same way, trying to resolve this issue, because it's impacting everybody's community, and it's a public safety issue, it's a health issue, and that's something that we'll work on. Third thing, if you don't mind, I know you only asked for 2, but
Overachiever.
Well, it just shows you all the things that we need to address. But the pipeline obviously is an issue that is of concern to me, although a large piece of that is not specifically in the 12th Essex district. It does impact all the residents of Peabody.
And I'm going to be asking you a question about that very shortly.
All right, here I go again. Okay.
No, that's okay, because it is important. And that question is, please tell me what your views are on the status of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, whether or not you support the pipeline. If yes, why? If no, why?
Okay. I do not. And the reason I don't is there are no end users in the city of Peabody, for one thing. And their proposed route goes right through the Independence Greenway, which is our bike path that runs from the Middleton line in behind Hannaford's and over to the park, and then continues down Lowell Street. But the problem is you have the residents on Glen Drive who really have invested their life savings into their homes and have done everything to make a nice neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood. And they're really being barraged by Kinder Morgan, who wants to get on their property. My understanding is that they've petitioned the Department of Public Utilities to see if they can get permission through public utilities to go on these people's lands to survey and do the things they need to do in their interest. And that bothers me.
So bypassing the homeowner is what you're saying?
Well, yeah, they're going on your property, and they're doing it under the guise of a public necessity.
Yeah.
And it's very rattling to the residents in that neighborhood, and it's not fair to them. The other thing is that the argument that they'll put things back the same or better than how they found it, it can't happen. You cannot replace a 40-foot tree, and they're looking at a 50-foot easement on both sides of that pathway. And again, there is no benefit to the city of Peabody coming from that. It's just the disruption is enormous. It's unfair to the neighborhood, and it's not the right thing for our city.
Well, I know that Senator Rosenberg has recently been very active on this, as has May Betancourt and others. And years ago, when I was in government, we were fighting the Maritimes National Pipeline.
Right.
So it's just a concern that FERC, which is the federal agency,
Right.
doesn't seem to take the state or the cities all that seriously in their complaints and objections.
It's a concern. You know, I had somebody say to me that really the city of Peabody should be looking at this and figuring out how they can benefit from it. And I said, that's, you know, they're making the decision for us that we're going to build this pipeline. And I said, that's not what the city wants. We don't want it. We don't need it. We don't want it. And we'll fight to the end. You know, I understand that FERC, in most cases, is not sympathetic or empathetic to the community. That doesn't mean we lay down and let them steamroll us. We need to fight. Maybe they're going to figure out, you know what? The city of Peabody is right, and so may be some of the other residents, and maybe they'll take an entirely different route. But if we lay back and let them do that, shame on us.
I agree with you. A proposed ballot question that has been approved to move forward by the Attorney General is the legalization of recreational marijuana. As you probably know, Massachusetts voters legalized marijuana for medical use in 2012 after decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of the substance in 2008. There will most likely be a ballot initiative in 2016 to legalize this in Massachusetts, although a state rep from Cambridge recently filed a bill legalizing marijuana in Mass to get legislators talking about it. At the State House hearing on the bill in January 2016 before the Judiciary Committee, the Campaign to Regulate Marijuana in Massachusetts testified, offering lawmakers a chance to avoid the question appearing on the 2016 Mass statewide ballot, since the proposed legislation is similar to their ballot initiative. The major difference between the bill and the ballot initiative is that the bill limits the number of locations that can hold marijuana licenses and ties them to the number of alcohol licenses in a town. For example, if a city or town has 10 liquor licenses, it would be able to get a maximum of 2 marijuana licenses. The bill and the ballot also have strong controls on edibles, and they limit servings and create requirements on labeling of the packaging, which will also be child-resistant and senior-friendly. The ballot petition initiative's aim is to legalize marijuana and feel the public policy question isn't whether to legalize marijuana, but how to legalize it. 23 states and the District of Columbia have legalized marijuana in some form or another. Where do you stand on this, and what facts or issues form your opinion?
Okay. My answer might be shorter than your question, but...
It's a very long question, but I was trying to give background.
No, it's great educationally. I do not support the legalization of marijuana. I think that in many instances it's a gateway drug, and if you look at the opioid crisis that we just discussed, in many cases it could lead to that. It is, when you get the part about the licensing, the Mass Municipal Association, in conjunction with Governor Baker, has a series of bills, and among those bills to supposedly help municipalities is a bill that would eliminate the limit on the amount of liquor licenses that a community has. So if you do something like that, then it negates the piece of the legislation where it would be tied to how many liquor license you have in a community. So in that respect, they don't gel. The two issues don't gel. I think we're heading down the wrong road with that. If you talk to the district attorney, if you talk to law enforcement, they'll tell you that. And you know, the marijuana that was from the 60s and 70s is not what is being produced today. There are a lot of chemicals that can be added. There are a lot of different substances. And it's not something that I think is beneficial to the city of Peabody or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Well, that was very succinct. I understand. Okay. Another one of the issues that was approved by the Attorney General to move forward is a constitutional convention. To a constitutional convention, if all other requirements are met, is a higher tax on millionaires. This would impose an additional 4% tax on people with taxable incomes higher than $1 million. revenue could only be used to fund public education and transportation. Where do you stand on this, Tom, and what facts or issues form your opinion?
Okay. First, let me say that for this year, for the legislature, the Speaker has made it quite clear that taxes are not on the table. So as far as the FY17 budget goes, there will be no new taxes coming out of the House. As far as the initiative goes, I have no problem with that going on the ballot and let the residents decide. We're talking about a tax in addition to earning $1 million. So your first $1 million is taxed at the rate it is now, and then there would be a surcharge. It is not. It's something that I would look at. I favorably view it because I think if you specifically were going to use it for transportation and education, there are a lot of areas in this Commonwealth that we must move forward, and those are two of the biggest areas, especially our education. If we want to stay high ranking in the nation, then we have to invest in it. Transportation needs, look, MBTA is a classic example. There are a lot of needs there. Roads and bridges, we are woefully inadequately servicing and maintaining our bridges across the Commonwealth. So it's something that I would be amenable to.
I'm sorry that we don't have time to talk about the tea, actually, but could you please tell us what other issues you feel are important to Peabody and that you would like to work on?
Well, transportation, I think you and I had this discussion before, but if I am fortunate enough to be elected on March 1st, I will ask the Speaker to be appointed to the Transportation Committee. There are several areas in the city, I think, that we could use help from the state, particularly the spur that runs from Peabody Square over to the Salem Depot.
Yep.
I think that there is a missed opportunity right now, and we should be running some type of trolley service on that track to bring people who work in Boston from Peabody. We could shuttle them over to Salem, and vice versa. When people come to visit Salem, taking the train from Boston or wherever, and they come and they visit Salem, they could hop on that spur and come down and either partake of things down in Peabody Square, or perhaps we could get it as far as North Shore Mall. So there are opportunities there. Centennial Drive, that intersection coming off Route 128, needs addressing. Whether I'm elected or not, it still needs to be addressed. But I would hope that as a member of the Transportation Committee, if I'm fortunate enough, that's something that I'd be looking for help on.
Excellent. Tom, I want to thank you for your views and opinions. I think this will help the viewers at home to understand your political leanings and help them decide Peabody's best representation. Is there anything else that you'd like to quickly tell the citizens of Peabody about yourself, or do you want them to know?
Well, I'd like to win. What I would like to talk about for a minute, if it's okay, is just reminding everybody that there are 2 ballots that will be available on March 1st. The state representatives race is a separate ballot from the presidential race. So depending on how the clerk's office has set this up, you will go in, you will check in, get your ballot for state representative, and then go to the next person at the table and declare whether you want a Republican or Democratic ballot. So you will have 2 ballots as you go to the ballot box. And I just want to remind people of that and ask that that you consider me on March 1st for a state representative.
Well, thanks, Tom. Good luck to you in the election. And to our viewing audience, for those of you living in Wards 1, 2, 3, 4, and Ward 5, Precincts 1 and 3, don't forget to vote on Tuesday, March 1st. I'd like to thank the staff at Pat Peabody Access Telecommunications for this show, and I'd also like to thank all of the candidates. It's not very easy to run for this office. It's for a short period of time, replacing our last state representative, and then candidates will be running again in November. So don't forget to go out and vote on Tuesday, March 1st.